Unbelievable. And welcome back to Jeff Koinange Live, right here on Citizen Television. It is time for The Bench, and my guest, arguably the best political tag team on TV, PLO Lumumba, Barrack Muluka, the man from Emmanuel. It is time to talk issues. And gentlemen, before the break, we talked about the country being broke. And let's face it, the president in his second and final term wants to talk about his 4 pillars. 4 pillars, which, you know, it's his vision. You know, everything: education, job and industrialization, universal healthcare, infrastructure, all of that, which all sounds really, really good. But if we're broke, PLO, well, how can we achieve any of this?
You know, Jeff, there is a sense in which you can't quarrel with what the president is saying in terms of the 4 pillars. They are good, but good intentions in and of themselves never delivered. If you look at the evidence that is available, one does not see the country moving in that direction. We're already getting into the first year, and the minister for the time, or the cabinet secretary for the time being in charge of finance, tells us we cannot collect sufficient revenue. He is telling us we've got to go on an austerity measure. He's telling us that we've had to go to borrow. We have Eurobond. It means that the national debt is growing by the day. We go into the industry. The university lecturers on strike. We see the Uchumi workers on strike. Nakumat workers have lost it. We are privatizing the sugar companies. It tells you that if you look at the national horoscope, if you may, we are skating on very thin ice, or because we are in Africa, on very slippery mud, and the country must take stock. I would have wanted to see the institutions of the state, the executive and the legislature particularly, behaving as if we are on a crisis mode and asking ourselves, how do we achieve this? Only yesterday, I watched the Chinese discussing what they want to do. You see discipline, you see focus, you see clarity of vision, and you see that they have engaged the overdrive gear, moving in the right direction. What do I see here? Crisis and political hyperbole at funerals and weddings. Barrack, I do not know whether you agree with me, but you must.
But it's true, Barrack. When did this rain start beating us? You know, it's pathetic to see that we're taking one step forward and several steps backwards.
I don't think we are taking any steps forwards, Jeff and PLO. We are actually walking on the same spot. And you can produce a lot of sweat and use a lot of energy when you are just walking on the same spot. And you can delude yourself that you are actually making certain motions. You see, the 4 pillars are good exercise, but they have not been placed in any context. They are not going to be memorable for any meaningful duration of time, just like lots of other things that we say that this is now what we are on. There's no thematic thrust that you can use to contextualize them and say this is where we are going. And the rain has beaten us for a very long time because basically we have not understood the meaning of government. We treat government in this country like a gravy train. It is supposed to be a forum or theater of colleagues, of friends, and these are eating friends. It is a theater of eating chiefs. So you get there essentially to eat, and you put there people because they are the right homeboys, right homegirls, and the right homeboys and homegirls are people who are going to help you to get money out of government. So that, Jeff, it doesn't matter. We've talked about what we have called an ethnic duopoly in the past. It doesn't matter that you belong to that ethnic fraternity. If you are not properly disposed to help to hemorrhage the national treasury, then you are wrong. You are not going to get that opportunity. And so, as we said at the start, almost in jest, but with a measure of very significant seriousness, if you're going to be getting funds out of the national treasury at night in sacks, you don't expect that you are going to get anywhere as a country. And this ailment, this malaise, this malady resides in the citizens, in all of us, because provided that you are considered to be our thief, we don't want anybody to touch you.
Absolutely.
Anything going wrong in any institution in this country is not supposed to be interrogated. We have got the crisis at Kenyatta National Hospital, and already you are seeing the ethnic barking dogs have already assembled. They are saying they are going to impeach the cabinet secretary. You cannot allow any process to go through any due steps until we reach a logical conclusion that this is what has happened in this context. They come out very quickly and saying this one is ours, we must protect our own. We reward some of them with some of the most senior positions in the country.
Yeah.
And you can talk about even the political parties. Which is this political party that hands over a certificate, a ticket to contest in elections to somebody who is associated with the most infamous heist in the country? You can say that the laws say that anyone and everyone is allowed until and unless they have been proven guilty by the courts and the appellate processes are exhausted. But as a political institution establishment, you ought to have your own standards. You must have your own benchmark. And you must say, yes, you've gone to court and the thing is still going on, but as far as we are concerned, you don't make the mark.
Yeah, and here's another thing that people don't seem to care about, PLO. The recent ban on logging. Deputy President said there's a ban, a 90-day ban on logging. Trees are being cut left, right, and center. Outside my house in Kitisuru, the machines are going day in, day out, cutting down trees. Imagine what's happening in the Mao.
But you see, Jeff, a country must operate on the basis of ideals and taboos, the do's and the don'ts. What we have succeeded in doing in this country is that we have normalized the absurd. We make pronouncements, but the culture of impunity is so deeply ingrained that when there is a ban such as that, it's simply an opportunity for people to ask for bribes. Yeah. In other parts of the world, individuals would be punished, and punished seriously. So this country must, in the nature of things, retrace our steps and ask certain very foundational and important questions. Do we want to move forward in a manner that is sustainable? If you look at the map of East Africa, this is the country that has a creeping desert. Yeah. And we've got to be very worried. Yeah. I fear, for example, that in the next 5 years we'll have no water in Nairobi. We'll have a crisis if we don't have one already. Yeah. Are we thinking about that? If you go look at our lakes, look at the level of pollution on our lakes, Lake Victoria, Naivasha, look at the level, the pollution of Nairobi rivers. If you look, whether it's Rwaka, whether it's Nairobi, whether it's Kirichwandogo, whether it is Kirichwa Kubwa, they are all polluted. The rivers no longer flow. Look at the Nairobi Dam. So in a nutshell, one of the things that we must do, and I think this is one of the things that I would expect President Kenyatta to do in this final term, call the nation to order. Yeah. And the National Assembly and the Senate, you know, what amazes me, there is something, if you permit me, that the French used to call politique de la chaise vide, the politic of empty chairs. And the politic of empty chairs simply works this way. The opposition says we are boycotting parliament. Who benefits? It is those who are in parliament. So there is no serious debate. Yeah. And what we have seen is that parliament is not playing its role. I would have expected some parliamentarian to have brought a motion in parliament on the question of logging. I would have expected serious issues to be deliberated upon in parliament. What I hear and what I see in the newspapers on Monday is what people said at funerals. Yeah. National policy of any country cannot be articulated at funerals and at weddings. It must be in parliament and in institutions. So one of the things that we must do is to ask ourselves the question, do we want as a country to move on the basis of laws. And I conclude that segment of my answer by reminding us, John Adams, who was, I think, one of the leading statesmen of the United States of America, in 1870 at the Commonwealth of Massachusetts said, we must make a choice. We either have a government of laws or a government of men. Here, we have a government of men.
Absolutely.
Of big men.
Yeah. And at the same time, Barrack, are we cannibalizing our country? Seems like, you know, nobody cares anymore. You eat where you can, and how you can.
The national philosophy from independence has always been about cannibalizing the country. Those who are of age will remember the famous dictum by the founding president. He used to talk about the elephant, which he said he had brought down. And he used to ask people like Bidad Kagia, people like
Paul Ngei.
No, Ngei was on the same side with him. People like Kungu Karumba. When Kungu Karumba said that our people cannot eat flags, this flag you have given me is not what we fought for. We fought for independence, which we would like our people to feel and to enjoy. And the flag was not only taken away, but Kungu Karumba was also taken away. He disappeared sometime in the 1970s, and we have never seen him again. Because Mzee was telling the people who had been with him in detention that independence had not arrived on a silver platter, that we had grabbed it. In Kiswahili, PLO, if you will remember, he used to say, hata uhuru hatukupewa kwa sahani, tulinyakua. And so the culture of unyakuzi started taking root at that time. And since independence up to where we are, the culture has been one of grab. Grab, take, eat, and run away very fast. Or grab, run away very fast, and eat. But you don't even get satisfied. It becomes a malady, an ailment. The grabbers keep on coming and looking around. You see a road here. One day I used to live somewhere here in Kileleshwa, Suguta Road. You wake up one day, you find the road has been diverted. Someone is constructing there. There's nobody to ask questions. You look at City Hall. There are fellows in City Hall in Nairobi stealing public spaces. Others say, when we get there, we are going to do it differently. They get there, within a fortnight, you no longer see them on the national landscape. They may as well have gone on pilgrimage to somewhere, I don't know where. And the same processes continue. So the country has been cannibalized since independence. And we have got different cohorts of cannibals, the one after the other. I was overflying the Mau a few days ago. It is unbelievable what has happened there and what is continuing to happen there. The charcoal burning, the felling of trees, and it is a disaster that is happening. It is no longer a disaster in waiting. And finally, as I bring the curtain down on this as well, it is a pity that when these matters were brought up a few years ago, the person who is now deputy president made political capital out of this, because it was politically expedient for him to distance himself from the protection of the Mau forest, and someone else took a political beating out of it. You can go to Muranga today. Just 2-3 years ago, we were talking about a drought that was coming to Muranga. We were telling the people in Muranga, you are going to have a serious water challenge. Go there now. 2 years later, they're already having a serious water problem. You go to Bomet, it has begun. In another 2-3 years' time, it's going to be the same thing. And it's this thing of the citizen who is basically a slave, not liking slavery, but being in love with the slave master, that this slave master is ours. So it doesn't matter what he or she does. we will go on with it.
And just to talk about cannibalization.
Yes.
You see, it is unfortunate that we say this, but the unwritten national creed is greed.
Yeah.
And greed cannot be satisfied. It's like taking salty water. The more you take, the more you thirst. And unfortunately, this has now been devolved. If we had Alibaba,
And
he now has 47 other, permit me to say, thieves. Because what is happening in the devolved units, of course, give and take. I'm dramatizing.
Sure.
It's not everybody that is a thief. But you go to different parts of this country, you find somebody who was a pauper, an MCA. Within 4 years, the individual is a multi-millionaire.
Yeah.
So the greed is so deeply ingrained, and people are now seeking public office not to serve, but to steal.
Yes.
And we, because of this culture of impunity and the ethnicization of our politics today, it is becoming almost impossible to have somebody punished. Because when you want to punish an individual, there are individuals who emerge from the woodworks saying what is said and what we've said times without number. He is the thief, but our own. And he is thus immunized. And that is why I think that our obituary as a country must not be written as yet, because I think we have room for maneuver. And that is why President Kenyatta must now draw the line in the sand. We have seen this line in the sand drawn by President Kagame, President Ian Kama, President Duterte. And my own view is that if he does this, and it becomes clear, crystal clear, that I'm not going to entertain thieves in my government, then history will remember him fondly.
Now that is legacy, because he has been talking about legacy.
Yeah.
And this legacy is not going to be about ugali na sukuma wiki. He's talking about food, he's talking about health, he's talking about housing, and he's talking about manufacturing. First, we have no basis for manufacturing because we are broke. Even ugali we may not be able to place on the table. The only legacy he can leave behind that would make him to be remembered is if he's going to draw the line, as PLO says.
Yes.
And we start seeing some people going to jail. It doesn't matter who he is. Lee Kuan Yew was doing those kinds of things. Yes, you're my brother. Yes, you've been my bosom friend. Yes, you've been whatever you may have been to me. But this is not about brotherhood.
But can he do that? Will he do that? Can he do that?
Well, he's watching.
It's a choice that he must make.
Yeah.
I've been looking at President Kenyatta lately, and there is a sense in which I want to be charitable to him. He's saying the right things. Now you must do the right things. I think there must be a wedding.
5 years
Yes.
ago, 5 years ago, you elected to be charitable to him.
Yes. I still want to be charitable to him.
And we were sitting on this bench at a hotel downtown, and you were charitable. And you said this is good. Now we want to see it being actualized, and we never saw it being actualized. When I had my former classmate and friend, Dave Mrade, talking about a more brutal, a more lethal, and a more ruthless President Kenyatta in a second term, I expected that he was going to clamp down on the thieves. These people we call corrupt merchants of corruption, they are actually thieves. The only difference between them and the ordinary fellow who does getter on you in town and the one who uses a gun is that these are gentlemen thieves, if you want.
The very incompatible words.
There's honor amongst thieves.
Kuna wezi wa honorable criminals.
You are using the word honorable in a very guarded way, I think.
It's an oxymoron.
I hear you.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
but there was something I was saying, that the president must ensure that there is a wedding between his words and his action. And time is running out. We're already in our first year.
Yeah, first quarter is almost gone.
First quarter is almost gone. And not only that, so that we spread the argument a little. One is saying that there are many things that ought to be happening that are visible. First of all, we've got to repair the economy. And in order to repair the economy, we must see fiscal discipline in terms of, we've seen what the Auditor General has been exposing for the last 1 week. And one sees wastage. And that kind of wastage cannot sit well in a country where the Cabinet Secretary for Finance says we have leakages and that these leakages are harming our economy. One wants to see that. One wants to see a leaner government. One wants to see expenditure being restricted to areas that are critical for the economy of the country. And those are the things that require that the country must have a conversation in Parliament. I would want to see the governors pulling in the same direction. I would want to see parliamentarians pulling in the same direction. And even if the opposition is not pulling in that direction, but pushing the government to move in the right direction. Because yes, if we don't, as they say in Kiswahili, mtego wa panya huingia waliomo na wasio kwemo.
Hapo kweli. Hapo kweli. At the same time, how do we do this, PLO Barrack, when people looking at us from the outside are saying, hey, you people have two presidents. You people have, you know, you have two separate centers of power.
Barrack will speak to that first.
Every society has got a multiplicity of centers of power. He has just talked about government pulling in one direction, and he has talked about those outside government pushing them in the same direction. As far as we can see in this country, we have got the Constitution, and that Constitution has handed the instruments of state and instruments of exercising power to an individual. We know where that individual is. If you don't know, that address is just a few meters from where we are sitting. Yes. If you are walking, it would take you about 5 to 7 minutes. And you'd be at that address. Uhuru Kenyatta has got the instruments of state. When Raila Odinga had his ceremony at Uhuru Park on the 30th day of January this year, I told you here before that that was just a dramatic statement. Yeah. In fact, that dramatic statement has been over-dramatized by all of us. We in the media, we in politics. We made it look almost like it is something that is encrypted in the Constitution. We were talking about Raila Odinga's swearing in, almost as if it is something that the Constitution and the law has put down, and therefore we would be expecting him to be sworn in, to the extent that we are now even talking of something called betrayal and demonizing certain individuals. Yes. And saying that these ones are cowards because they did not come to the swearing in. Yeah. What swearing in was this? This was not swearing in. This was just a dramatic statement, and it was a dramatic statement where Raila Odinga was telling Uhuru Kenyatta that you may call me Mugoroki. I'm not a Mugoroki. I have got people, and these are the people here who are behind me. Otherwise, he should have marched to State House to ask Uhuru Kenyatta to vacate, and should have taken over, should have formed the government. He should be right now addressing the issues that we are talking about.
Yeah. So I think before you answer, look at that headline, Monica. That headline, right, from this past weekend, you talked about it. I smell betrayal. That's what he said.
Yes, it's a most unfortunate statement. I don't want to say headline, because the people in the newspapers, and I've been one of them for the longest time. I cut my teeth in journalism 35 years ago, so I understand about headlines and deadlines and how and why we write them. They must have an owner somewhere, and you must start asking, what betrayal are we talking about here? Now, this is about the NASA agreement, NASA coalition agreement, which has got nothing to do with the things that happened at Uhuru Park, and which I have already explained that they lack deep foundational political entrenchment and pillars, because this was just a demonstration of frustration in point of fact. But when you go back to the NASA agreement, at Article 10A, it says this agreement shall be valid for 5 years, and it will be subject to consideration for renewal after 5 years. It says, number 2, that the person who is going to be the coalition's presidential candidate in 2017 will not be eligible for presentation as the coalition's presidential candidate again in the event that the coalition agreement is renewed. And third, it says that the political party that produces the presidential candidate in 2017 will not be eligible for producing a presidential candidate in 2022. Now, this is why we are hearing people are being told, don't talk about 2022. Yeah. This is why we are seeing all this drama and people being painted in very bad colors, people being made to smell, to stink, so that you can say, look, these cowards cannot run for this office in 2022. Let Baba be the one to run. You know, Jeff, I must come here and tell the world the truth. And that is the truth, that somebody is looking for space to wangle out of an agreement that when it was convenient, you got into that agreement. And now you are seeing that Uhuru Kenyatta is actually sitting in that place. And you can't remove him. Whether we recognize him, we don't recognize him, or both, he's actually sitting there. And he sat there long enough to make it impossible for anyone to remove him before the lapsing of that period. That is why nobody is any longer talking about another election in August this year. Yeah. That mantra was on a few months ago. It has died, quiet, slow death. It is not there. And you are hearing, don't talk about 2022. But you look at people, you look at their postures, you look at their body language, you look at the things they are doing, you look at how they are demonizing other people, and you can see that they are gathering their paraphernalia for 2022. You bring a new Secretary General, and as he's taking over, he's saying, hey, if you are short and we are tall, it is not our fault that you are of short stature. We are not going to, you are not going to ask us to bend so that we are of the same height. From now onwards, it's our party first. And you go to a certain function and you get a deputy party leader who is telling the gathering, and you have invited guests to insult them in their presence. And you are telling them, actually you are addressing them, when you are telling the gathering here, chama ni ODM. And you say, lakini ubaya wenu hamuelewi. Hamuelewi, it's that you don't understand that we are getting out of this agreement.
It's a bitter pill to swallow, isn't it, PLO?
You know, just as I said at the beginning, the hippopotamus has come out of the river and it tells us the crocodile is unwell and the frogs and the fishes are unwell. We must believe it. And it's evident. It is quite clear that things are no longer at ease in that arrangement, which is a sad thing because one desires an opposition that is strong and good for purposes of pushing the government. Unfortunately, that is not happening because the House is divided. But that notwithstanding, I hold the view that the individual parties within the NASA formation, ANC or Ford or Wiper, should now come out and state categorically that this marriage has broken down irretrievably. And we are going to play our role in parliament. If you look at, and the numbers sometimes don't matter if you have good issues. Look at what has happened in South Africa. How the DA and the EFF used the institution of parliament to ensure that even the ANC, which was a bigger party, began to read from the same script. And it is important for the sake of the nation that my good friends come out and stand in the agora and tell us that we tried a marriage, but that marriage broke down because the marriage are not willing to go on with the marriage.
They're not, the marriage cannot break down just because one partner or two partners have gotten out, because the contract is very clear about how that marriage ends. First of all, within 5 years' time, if everything stays where it is, it will come up for consideration for renewal. That does not mean that it will automatically be renewed.
What happens in the meantime,
It means that everybody should be strengthening their party, because in 2022, it means that you are open to go it alone, or you are open to seek alternative partnerships, because in the end, we are all Kenyans, we are all here. We have had the governor of Kakamega County, who is my home governor, and deputy party leader in ODM, saying that they are going to look for other partners. And so all the other partners within ODM, also within NASA, also have that freedom and license to look for other partners. And third is that in the event that 3 of the partners get out of the coalition, then the coalition no longer exists. So it doesn't matter that one party can get out, the coalition will carry on. But woe betide the one who gets out, because if we have been together with you and you didn't make it, regardless that it may have been stolen, or regardless that you lost, what makes you think that you are going to win when you are alone? When we are with you, you couldn't win. In 2007, Kalonzo Musyoka went away. You missed 1 million votes. And regardless, again, of the circumstances, you lost. Maybe if we had been together and he was there, perhaps it could have been different. In 2013, Mudavadi went different direction. He denied you a certain number of votes. If what IBC told us is to be believed, that Uhuru Kenyatta beat you with a margin of 88,000 votes, that 500,000 or so would have made a difference. And now you start thinking that you can buy in straight to in the electorate. It doesn't happen. In 2013, Ruto went away, and you imagined that you'd buy into the Kalenjin electorate directly. It didn't work, and it will not work again.
Yeah.
So woe betide he or she who goes away. But the marriage, for the time being, in spite of what we are saying to one another, including on this show, is still there.
It's a difficult marriage.
It is.
We are going to sleep in the same bed tonight.
But one will be looking east, and the other will be looking west.
I think, the blanket is not covering all the parties sufficiently.
Big people and big parties sleep in big beds.
We hear you.
PLO, I have had the privilege of being walked around your residence when it was recently inaugurated.
And here's a big bed.
I didn't fail to observe that you had a big bed, in spite of your rather diminutive stature.
Absolutely.
PLO, it looks like Barrack is seething inside.
He's seething.
You can feel it.
Yeah.
He's not a happy man.
No,
he feels betrayed.
But no, let's leave Barrack out of this.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
NASA is a formation which we must respect, because we are in the business of respecting formations. But it is in difficulties. But we should look at it in the context of the impact on the nation. This is what, in my view, is germane and legitimate for debate. And my own view is that it's important that we have an opposition party that will help move the national agenda forward. And that can only happen if they read from the same script, and if they don't, the individual members of those formations come out and begin to pursue their agenda. And of course, they are entitled from time to time. It is in the nature of democracy to have these spats. So that what I would want to see is the institution of parliament being used effectively, so that we don't have a government that has a carte blanche in terms of doing things that affect us all. And as long as NASA is quarreling within herself, if you may, we are denied the benefit of their positive contribution to the national agenda.
But the quarrels, if we call them quarrels, that's part and parcel also of politics, and I'm happy that PLO acknowledges that what he calls spats will be there. If you look at the other side of the political divide, you will notice that there are also issues.
Yep.
You have seen people who were elected to parliamentary leadership. You have seen them being stripped of that leadership. You have seen them being read the Riot Act 2.
Yeah.
You have seen parts of central Kenya telling Deputy President that we are not going to be with you. You have seen that his home turf of Rift Valley has got issues. In a nutshell, the political arena is not, as we have said ad nauseam, it is not a pot of cold porridge. It is a hot crucible of interests, of ideas, of opinions, and all these things are competing, and so it must be hot.
Absolutely.
And it's going to remain hot.
Not
all the way to
not
2022.
A cold pot of porridge,
No, but
a hot
Jeff,
crucible.
we must not lose sight of what Barrack is saying, because he's here in his personal capacity, but he's the Secretary General of ANC.
Correct.
So he speaks with some element of authority on some of these things.
Yes.
Yeah, and we must respect that.
No doubt about it.
Please do. You had better.
Is your candidate going to run in 22?
Of course. He's not only going to run in 2022, he's the president in waiting.
Well, it took him that long to tell us this.
Which crocodile is unwell? If my candidate runs, then the crocodile is unwell.
Crocodile is the hippopotamus. Your candidate.
Gentlemen, let's take a break and come back and talk about that, these political realignments.
Yes. We must talk
Can my DVD beat WSR?
Let's talk about
Yes.
because the NASA agreement is very clear.
Yes.
That Raila Odinga will not be the candidate. And I think it is very unfortunate that he tells people not to talk about 2022. We must talk about it.
We have to. And Kalonzo, where is Mr. Kalonzo?
There are three people within the NASA fraternity. There's Musalia Mudavadi, there's Moses Wetangula, and there is Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka. Those three. Those are the people we talk about when we look at 2022.
Yeah, but
and when we read a headline like that one, we smell betrayal.
We are going to the break, but if you'll ask me this when you come out,
yes.
My desire is that all those individuals who have had the advantage of serving this country go home and we have a national renewal with new individuals and faces, and that may come to pass.
Wow. Fascinating stuff. Fascinating.
We will pick that up. Of course, it's an extreme view.
It's an extreme view.
And I've never known
extremities.
I've never known PLO to be an extremist. He has always been a centrist.
PLO has
but, you know, he has been gallivanting around the globe. He's been globe-trotting.
So I must have acquired some of
He needs to tell us what he was told in the land of the spirits.
Wow, fascinating conversation, folks. Keep it right here. Keep tweeting at Barrack M, at Koinange Jeff, at Citizen TV Kenya, the hashtag JK Live. When we come back, we will discuss more about these political realignments. We'll read your tweets, your Facebook posts, and also your SMSs. Keep it locked right here on JK Live. JK Live takes a break. We'll be back in a moment. My goodness, it's getting...
Connected Farm.